Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. And what did we say this one was? The spooky Halloween pumpkin edition of Ask Mike.
It was not going to happen. You were going to try to dress me up like Crocodile.
Crocodile Hunter, Steve Irwin. You're Mike Irwin.
I'd rather be Crocodile Dundee than Steve Irwin.
I kind of like Crocodile Dundee. I think that would have been fun. We didn't dress up today because we got a whole lot of tricks and treats for you today in these questions. So let's start with some treats, shall we?
Basketball.
And that's basketball. You're right. We're going to start with some basketball questions. Hot Dogger says, I remember Musselman saying of last year's team, he was getting frustrated at the beginning of the season. His wife tried to encourage him to have patience with them. This year is different. He was all smiles and stuck his chest out talking about this team after watching the Hogs' first game and how well they played on Saturday. I can see why.
Let me talk about that a little bit because he was very positive, and I think all of us were, but we're very sensitive about being accused of overhyping. But we had some things to go on. We had the red-white game, and I've talked about how that referee in the red-white game came up to me and said, hey, man, this is a better team. He could just tell the difference in the veterans that we have this year as opposed to starting the season with relying on so many freshmen, even if they were 5 stars. So there was a difference going in. But Musselman said after that game, as confident as he sort of was, he still wasn't sure what would happen. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, Arkansas can never have nice things. There's been too much hype. Everybody's talking about this. The arena is full of people. Everybody's going to get in there and something's going to go wrong. It just always does. So I was very cautious at the start of that game. Now, I wasn't there. I took the week off. I always do the open date week.
Yeah.
But I could sit there and watch my TV and tell what was going on. I'm telling you, you can tell more watching a game on TV than you can in person. So I was seeing all that stuff. Well, early on, I was like, uh-oh, because they tried 3 early threes and missed them, but their defense was keeping them in it. They were down a little bit early. And then they started hitting some threes and they started doing some other things. And here's the thing. When it was all over, I had several thoughts about it. First of all, you don't have to rely on freshmen anymore. Blocker, one of those freshmen, didn't even play.
Yeah, well, Bayfall, right?
Bayfall didn't even get in the game. But Blocker came in. He's your backup point guard. He was okay. I think he hit, I don't know, something like 2 or 3 or something and had an assist, played within himself. But there was not a lot of pressure on him. And isn't it interesting how much better you can play when people don't expect you to do all this stuff? I always felt like even early on, whether the injury was present or not, that Nick Smith Jr. had a lot of pressure on him, being from Arkansas, being the #1 recruit, being part of the #2 recruiting class. Well, you don't have any of that this year. You've got a typical Musselman team before last year, which is made up of about half of it is about newcomers. But always before, his teams have taken sometimes into January before the defense gels and before everything just starts kind of falling into place. This one's already doing it. We're already seeing really good defense. We've already seen parts that if one part's not working well, another part steps in. I mean, I want to start with the point guard, L. Ellis. This guy, to me, he scores 12 points in this game. He gets a bunch of assists. He's smart. He runs the point well. And he's going to be a huge difference in this team because you were talking to me, and he's not a true point guard, but he's so smart he is a point guard.
It's the basketball IQ of playing basketball. This is his 5th year playing collegiate basketball. And it's getting that experience at the JUCO level where he came into the JUCO level and dominated. Right. And then going to a team like Louisville and dominating on a very bad Louisville team and then dominating there. Now you come to Arkansas and you just have all this knowledge of the game. Yeah. And that's what he brings.
And then you got Battle. He scores 12 points, but he gets 5 rebounds, 4 assists. The assists were impressive on this team. Devo, just 2 points, but 4 assists. Blocker was 3 of 4, I mentioned. As a team, they shot 50% from the floor, 76% from the line, 15 turnovers against a really good Louisville.
20 turnovers.
No, Arkansas had 15 turnovers.
Oh, yeah, 15 turnovers.
Against a very good Purdue defense, but they forced 20.
That's what I was going to say.
So all of that is good. I'm sitting there when it's over trying to say, well, where is the problem on this team? Well, okay, Jalen Graham got the back spasms and he wasn't available. And Musselman said, we don't know how long he's going to be out. And that's something to keep an eye on. But on the other hand, Brazil is coming off that knee surgery, and you're not sure what he's going to do. He's been out. There's all this hype, and I thought in the first 2 minutes of the game he was pressing, and he wasn't doing very well. But then he settled in. He had 15 points in that game. He looked really good. He was getting assists. He was getting rebounds. But then this guy, Chandler Lawson, the Memphis transfer, nobody's paying any attention to this guy. He's 6'8", but he's really like 7 foot because of his wingspan.
No.
And he scores
insane.
10 points inside. He's 3 of 4, 3 of 3 from the free throw line, playing good defense. And Musselman said after the game, he's the most coachable guy I've ever had around. So he's somebody to keep an eye on. You still want Graham back. At some point, does Bay Fall start to contribute? You hope he does. Because when I look at this team, the only area where I'm a little bit kind of going, I don't know, is the inside game. Yeah. It looks like it's okay, but they need all of their parts. So Bay Fall needs to come around. You need to get your veteran big guy coming back.
Yeah,
Makai Mitchell, and you get, because he's capable of scoring 8-10 points in a good game.
He is.
And he's capable of playing good defense. He just didn't play well in this game. So, that'll be good for him. I'm sure they'll talk to him. So, again, I'm also thinking about this. Think about those guys on that team. They've worked their butts off all summer into the fall. Everybody's talking about them. Everybody's mad about football. So now all the pressure's on them to deliver, and all this hype, and 20,000 people are sitting in there, and they've got to come out and perform. It'd be like if you were in a play and somebody said, hey, wait a minute, there's like thousands of people out there. You'd be going, whoa, I don't know about this. Get a little nervous. And yet, they not only played well, they were in pressure situations. There were a couple of times in the second half when their big guy was, their 7'4" guy was in foul trouble.
He was in foul trouble, yeah.
And they almost blew it open to 12, 14 points. But every time that happened, Purdue kept coming back because they're good. And I kept thinking, they're not giving in to the pressure. They're not letting the fans get to them. And I had Grant Hall tell me, who I've known for 50 years, because he's been to a lot of those games where the 20,000 people are in there, and he said this was different. Because this wasn't 20,000 season ticket holders. No. This was a lot of new people in there that getting to go to a one-time game, and then there were more students than they normally have.
It was huge,
And he said that was loud in there. And yet, Purdue never buckled. And when he came off the bench finally and played a lot with his fourth foul, he made a difference. Mm-hmm. They were having to spend so much time trying to contain him in the middle. Other people were open. And they actually got the lead. And when they were up by 3 points with about 22 seconds left, I said, well, who's going to hit a three with the kind of pressure defense these guys are going to play? Well, Tremont Mark hits the shot, and then they go into overtime, and then they really took over in overtime. Yeah. They should have won by. They won by 4, should have won by 6. There was a goaltending right at the buzzer that gave them 2 points. So this is big, and the season hasn't started yet. And the other contrast between last year is the last year's version went to the big exhibition game down in Texas and got their clocks cleaned.
Yeah.
We didn't see that because it wasn't streamed or anything. But they got their clocks cleaned last year in a game like this. This team played really well. There is some news where you go, whoa, wait a minute here, though. What about Tennessee? Tennessee goes to Michigan, who's number 4, and beats them at Michigan without
Was it Michigan State? Was it Michigan State or Michigan?
It was Michigan.
Okay, I
think it was Michigan.
Okay.
Anyway, they were missing 2 of their starters, and they still did that. So that's a team to keep an eye on. Kentucky had an impressive first exhibition game. So the SEC is going to be good, and Evan, who's on our staff and is very familiar because he went to Indiana and very tent for Big Ten basketball. He told me yesterday, he said, now look, he said Arkansas's very makeup puts them in a position to do really well against a Big Ten type team. But he said they won't match up as well against some of these SEC teams because they're faster and quicker and they run more and they do. And I said, well, okay, we'll see. I'm not sure.
I disagree. I disagree with that.
The point is, regardless of whether that's true or not, here's the difference in basketball. You don't have to win the SEC. You just have to get in the tournament, and it's what you do against these type teams that decides how far you go. The other problem now, though, is expectations, because I just spent last week on my week off going back and forth with football fans who are just madder than hell at us because they say it's the media's fault about football. We overhyped it. I'm telling them, no, we didn't overhype it. You did. And now you don't want to take any of the blame because that's what a lot of those people did. And the same thing will happen to basketball. They're over there hyping the fool out of this team. It's already a Final Four team going to the Final Four. If they don't go, they're going to flip it around and say, we said it.
Well, I mean, look at
it. And I did not say it.
Well, look, I mean, you have to look at the alternative, right? This is a team that last year went and got creamed by Texas in an exhibition. Right. But what did that team do? They turned it around. They clicked at the right times, which is always what you want in basketball.
Once again, beat a 1 seed.
Exactly. So you have a team right now that is already the makeup of a really, really good team. Musselman is in a great position, but don't be shocked if they drop some games. They have a really tough schedule. Like you said, Mike, they have a tough schedule in the SEC, and they have a tough non-con schedule as well.
They do. They're going to be playing some big games coming up.
They are going to be playing that. Furman's a great team. They play them in the non-con schedule. They play Duke. They go and they play. They go into the Bahamas and play a tough schedule. I mean, they play some really tough non-conference teams. So listen. Hold it, breathe if you're a Hog fan. Be excited about basketball season, but even I find myself getting too hype about teams, and I have to kind of, okay, let's think about this.
Be realistic, because in basketball, it all boils down to what happens in March.
That's all that anybody cares about. If you care about anything else, call me, because you need to learn.
It's a totally different sport.
It's a totally different sport. I think you can tell Rick Barnes and Tennessee had a great season last year. But what happens? They go and they lose early on in the tournament. Alabama, same thing. You bet those teams would have liked to be where Arkansas was?
They would.
Absolutely. That's
what
matters.
You do not care what happened in the SEC.
It doesn't matter. So anyways, Hog in Iowa wants to know, what is up with the fans' students immediately booing a specific player from the other team every time he touches the ball? If it's an attempt to intimidate the opponent, it never seems to work. I don't have a problem with it if the player's done something to deserve the treatment, such as being accessory to murder. Whoa. Otherwise, I find it moronic.
I'm thinking this guy must be old like me, because I think that way. I mean, if you really asked me about this, I would go, yeah, that's not good. But I don't care anymore. They've been doing it so long that I'm just used to it. And it's a student thing. And it is their campus. This theoretically is for them. We sometimes forget this. These teams are made up of students. They play on campus. The students should come first. So if they want to act nutty and stuff, that's their business. I mean, it's just, I would probably say, yeah, I wish they wouldn't do that, but I don't care anymore.
Well, but it's like one of those things where it's their shtick. You know, they pick a player, they boo that player, and they pick him for different reasons or whatever, if he's from Arkansas or whatever it is.
And it sometimes does work.
But sometimes it does work. We were looking on Twitter earlier about the booing, and I saw a tweet from 2 years ago from a student that said, it does work because we played Mississippi State. The guy we booed in that game had 0 points, and he fouled out.
Yeah,
so
they're going to do that. They're going to do it. They're not going to change. Maybe this guy's not used to going to games, and he's just seeing that.
And he got to go to the Purdue game, and he's like, why are they booing this guy?
Yeah, but believe me, it's just something that's happened.
I mean, I think they even asked a player, an opposing team's player, how he felt about it, and he was like, fans are going to be fans.
Yeah,
you know?
They're used to it. It happens to Arkansas when they go on the road.
Yeah, exactly. Just let the students be students. They're having fun. Marty Bird's Proxy says, many younger generation Hog fans may not know the connection with retired legendary Purdue coach Gene Cady. Any memory about Cady that stands out from his time here on Eddie's staff? I don't know. I want to know this answer too.
Yeah, Gene Cady and Pat Foster, who were those two assistants, and they both went on to become successful head coaches. But they were kind of behind the scenes guys. Here's what would typically happen, because Barnhill was wide open in those days. You'd walk in there, a student, me, anybody. You could walk
like
in
at
there.
any time?
Yeah.
Oh,
you
wow.
just come in there. They didn't have it doors locked or anything. People could just walk in there and watch practice.
Wow.
But typically what would happen is Eddie Sutton would get out there and he would have something he wanted to, an emphasis he wanted to make, and he would be out there intensely working with these guys. The other coaches would be kind of helping him, but they wouldn't be doing much. And he was trying to show them a game plan. What do we want to do this week? We're going to work. No, you don't do this. And he'd be going back and forth, and it was very intense for about 30 minutes. Then they'd take a break, and he would always walk upstairs and disappear. And I didn't know what he was doing. And then the two assistants, Pat Foster and Gene Cady, would take over, and they would then run the rest of the workout. I finally found out one day what he was doing, and here's how I found out. I walk in there one day, they just lost to Rice, and they shouldn't have lost to Rice because they weren't very good, and the fans were all mad. And I walk in there, and Sutton, he sees my bag, a camera bag, and he goes, "You got a wireless mic in there?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Put it on me." I said, I'm going to show everybody on TV what I'm doing to fix this." So I did. I filmed him for about 30 minutes and picked out the parts that were interesting and put it on the air that night, and it was really interesting. But when the 30 minutes was over, he didn't come over there and take the mic off. He just went walking upstairs. So I'm listening. He goes up there and gets on the phone and starts calling his coaching buddies. He's calling Bobby Knight and talking to him for a while, and then he's calling somebody else. And I'm just,
And he still has your mic on.
Yes, I can't hear them because he's talking to them over the phone, but I can hear him. And I can sort of tell what's going on based on the things he's talking about. So what I'm telling you is Sutton was kind of the face of that team, but the other guys were more the work guys when the other stuff was over. I'm not saying that we didn't talk to him at all. I'm sure we did some interviews. Pat Foster was more outgoing than Cady was. Gene Cady was this big guy. He looked more like a football coach. And he kind of, if you talked to him or tried to interview him, he kind of looked at you like, "Hurry up, because I don't have time for this." So you kind of just got straight to the point and then got it over with, and then he was gone. So I didn't have a lot of interaction with him. I thought he was a good coach. He went on to become a good head coach. But I don't have any Gene Cady stories other than to say whenever I was looking at him, he always looked at me like, "Go away." So,
That's a good one. I like that. I like that story. I can't believe it. How did you ever get the mic back?
Well, he finally came back down and said, "Coach, you might want to take that mic off." And he goes, "Oh, okay."
Okay, so you did get it back. You didn't have to like mosey.
Thankfully, he didn't go to the restroom or anything.
That's what I was thinking.
Then I might have had to flip it off.
Good one, Mike. Penn Hogs says, leading up to the Purdue game on Saturday, I've seen quite a few interviews with Eric Musselman, and I hear him talking about how involved he is with scheduling. In contrast, Sam Pitman seems to have no say in the schedule. Is there really that big of a difference in scheduling approaches between the two sports?
Well, let's separate this into two things, conference games and non-conference. You don't have any say over conference games, and you don't in football and you don't in basketball.
Right.
So they're the same there. Where the difference comes is in basketball, you've got more non-conference games, period, in basketball. You got about 12 sometimes, 10 to 12, as opposed to 4, and it may go down to 3 in 2005 in the SEC. So there's that, but each of those programs has a guy in charge of scheduling future games. Musselman's got a guy. Now, I don't know whether he talks to the guy or not, or whether they compare notes, but there's a guy that does that. Well, there's a guy in the athletic department that does it for football. And because football is a totally different thing, in football, when you bring in a non-conference opponent, they're bringing in over 100 people. They got to have rooms for all those people, and it's all got to be in the same place. So they don't often schedule that this year, in January to play that fall. They sometimes do it 2 and 3 years in advance, so you can have that whole hotel reserved. So you can have a restaurant reserved for this night where it's closed except for the team, where they can take somebody to a movie theater and make sure nobody else is in there. We reserve the whole movie theater. So they have to be able to do that in advance. And so that's what that guy's job is. His job is to work with whoever's working with the team that's coming in, and they work out all these details. So the football coach doesn't have a lot to say about that. In some cases, a guy like Pitman will inherit some games. I don't know how far back BYU went, but that was a home and home, and he probably didn't want to go to Provo, even though they won. Maybe he'd rather just have a rent-a-win game to come in. I don't know what he had to do with how the Liberty thing came about, but that didn't turn out to be a good game to play. So he has less to say about his non-conference schedule because of the differences in the two sports. But let me talk about what's really at issue here, and that is the conference schedule in both sports, because it stinks, and it has been this way for a while. Musselman always gets like a top-loaded schedule in early January. They're always going off on the road and playing Florida and turn around and play Tennessee twice, you know, before they come here and all this crazy stuff. And it's been happening to Pitman. It happened this year. So why does that happen? If Roy Sankey was sitting here right now,
Greg Sankey?
Greg Sankey. Roy, I'm thinking Roy
I know.
Roy Kramer.
Yeah.
If Greg Sankey were sitting here right now, he would say, "You're wrong." So I'm telling you right now, he wouldn't agree with what I'm about to say.
Okay.
But here's what I'm
here for it.
Here's what I'm going to say. In the SEC, as in most conferences, I think they're all this way to a certain extent, but I know it's this way in the SEC. Football is the dog that wags the tail. In other words, it's the big thing, and the tail is basketball, baseball, and all those other sports. Now, everybody's been making a big deal right now out of all the conference championships Arkansas has won. They're number one since joining the league. They're number one conference championship.
Yes.
So when these Missouri fans start digging them about this and that, they're going, yeah, Missouri, look where you stand. After, in the years that you've been here, you're last.
They've won like two or three. Yeah, two.
So they're making fun of them. But here's what other fans would say. Who cares about that? If you're not a volleyball fan or a parent of a softball, you don't care about that stuff. It's all about football. And I believe the pecking order about anything, how much airtime you get on the SEC network, what your schedule is like, that all is determined by the respect you either get or don't get in football. So when people tell you, yeah, we got to win in football, no kidding, because it affects other sports. You need your football program winning. You need them up there in the top 5 or 6 in the conference, not 10th or something like that. Because if you don't, you're never going to get the respect you want. So Hunter Yurachek has to fix this. I don't know how he's going to do it. We're all hearing that Pitman will be back and will get another year. But whatever happens, he's got to get this turned around. And, you know, I'm having a discussion with Marty Houston last night, who works here. And he's got a friend, Trey Dare, that used to be a part of what was then Razorback Nation. He's up in Boston now working. And he's telling Marty, nah, Arkansas will never be any good in football. And Marty's going, you're crazy. He said, you tell me what's different about basketball or any of these other sports that's different in football. And he can't give him an answer. It's just different. Well, no, it's not just different.
No.
If you get the right coach, the same things that bring athletes onto this campus in those other sports will work here. You just have to get the right guy.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's why getting this football program is turned around, because it's obviously important for the fans and it's important for money, but the SEC office will never give you the kind of respect you deserve if your football program is down there 8th, 9th every year.
Yeah, well, obviously not, because they're slapping us with 11 a.m. kickoffs every single week. And we got a 3 p.m. for the Auburn game, I think. But, I mean, it's like there's no respect there. Even if you have other coaches that are going like Nick Saban saying Arkansas is a good football team, there's no respect unless you're winning and you're a winning program. And you're right, Mike. It does all drip down from football. It really, really does.
It's not fair to those other sports, but I got to tell you, tough. Yeah. It's just the way it is. I could feel if you're a softball, if you're Courtney Deifel and you feel like you got a bad draw or something, you're just going to have to deal with it, because until this football program gets better, you're going to have stuff like that happen.
But to be fair, you know, when Courtney Deifel, it says something about the coaching staffs that Courtney Deifel can still continue to bring in highly ranked recruits, have highly ranked recruiting classes. Same with Dave Van Horn in baseball. It says something a little bit about who they are as people, their coaching staffs, things like that.
But I've seen Van Horn. I've seen them get the shaft early in a conference race.
No, they do. They absolutely get the shaft, because you need to. Arkansas needs to be more of a. I've talked about it on the show before. A national brand. There are people. If you go up to like New York City and things like that, they will not. They can't tell you who Arkansas's mascot is. They can't. They can't tell you. But they could tell you who Duke's mascot is. Yeah. They could tell you who Florida's mascot is, because they're a national brand, because they've done that. They've built it up. And so Arkansas needs to do the same thing, and it starts with football. You're right, Mike. Moving on, though, because we have a lot more questions going on today. We're turning to football now, I think, is what we're doing. And Edward Clutch says, was wondering if you've heard anything about any of the players going to Coach Pitman about the offense not working any time before the Mississippi State disaster. Just wondering how it got to the point that those players basically had to quit in a terrible loss for the topic to finally be addressed.
You'd have to be on that team to know for sure. I start talking to people behind the scenes, trying to find out what's going on there. And here's what I was told, that no, the players didn't do any of that until the Mississippi State game, because they continued to play close losses. There continued to be moments with the offense when it looked really good. They looked really good toward the end of the Alabama game, and Alabama has one of the better defenses in the SEC. So until that Mississippi State game, everything, it wasn't perfect, but this is what I'm told. The players weren't going to Pittman or doing things and just giving up or anything like that. There was no sign of that. And what happened in the Mississippi State game was that they continued to add plays to the offense, and a lot of times they'd spend all week long working on new plays, and then he wouldn't run them. But they got that interception right off the bat on Mississippi State's first possession, marched right, got a couple of first downs, went right into the red zone, and all of a sudden the play calling went back to that same old red zone stuff. Run, throw on 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 6.
I would be annoyed if I was the offense, too. I'd be annoyed if I was KJ,
And they say
honestly.
that's when KJ just said it's never going to change.
Yeah.
And he checked it in, and everybody else checked it in. And then after the game, Pittman knew for the first time, yeah, they're tired of this. And then he said he stepped in and made a change. Now, I got people telling me.
I know.
I got people telling me that wasn't his decision, that Yurachek stepped in and said Enos has to go. I don't believe that.
I don't either.
But that's what some people are saying. And you got other people saying it wasn't Enos. You got people saying it was KJ's fault, that he didn't put the work in and he wasn't doing what he had to do and blah, blah, blah. So welcome to my world, hearing this, and they're two different things, and you're going, well, which is it? Because there's such a contrast there. And one of them is Enos the Goober's fault, and another conversation, it's no, KJ got too much NIL money, and he was wearing big Armani suits and driving a Corvette, and it just got to his head. And I'm sitting there going, okay, if I put this in front of the fans in a poll, Enos's fault, KJ's fault, how's that going to come out? It's going to be about 99% to 1.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it wasn't that other one, but right now it's not clear, and until I get more information, I'm going to tend to assume that it was an Enos issue.
Well, you just said it, Mike, and we've said it on the show before. There were losses in there, BYU, LSU, where play calling, we were mad about the play calling, and Pittman was frustrated, and KJ's frustrated. If you have all of these people frustrated over that, you assume that if you cut that out, it's going to get better. So, but we don't know yet because we haven't seen it in action. So the Florida game will be very telling. And speaking of that Florida game, Mousetown says, you've got a Florida alum on this show. Oh, that's great. What does Courtney think about how Florida will approach this game? And be honest. Don't give us a bunch of Gator hype.
Okay,
so I've got to answer this
because I didn't go to Florida, so you're up. You got to answer this.
Okay, let me be. I'm going to be perfectly honest because I've had a lot
of
Gator
hype.
No Gator hype. I'm telling you exactly what I'm hearing from the fan base right now. Okay, they are mad. They are upset over that Georgia loss, of course, because they want to go in everywhere. It doesn't matter that Georgia's ranked highly. It doesn't matter. You're supposed to keep it close in that game, and they did not.
Right.
So they are very mad. There are a lot of fans that do not like Billy Napier. They do not like him. They want him gone. There's a lot of that fan base. There's also a very good portion of the fan base that I agree with that are very upset that it's an 11 a.m. kickoff in Florida when it's going to be 85 degrees and sunny. And if you've ever been to the swamp, there's a reason why they call it the swamp, because the humidity is awful. It's a bowl. It traps in the heat. You've got fans wearing all black. The players wearing all black in that game, that's a point for Arkansas. That is a point for Arkansas. So you have a lot of things stacking up against the Gators.
And you said that this was being pushed by the school. throughout the
yeah,
summer is it's going to be a night game.
Well, they announced at the beginning of the season, and the thought process was, right, Arkansas, Florida. There's a lot of history with Arkansas. It might be a win for the Gators because Arkansas hasn't been able to beat them in the Swamp. So they're setting it up. They're like, okay, this would be a good game for a blackout. And if you do a blackout, you think it's going to be a night game, right? That's what the fans think. Oh, we're going to black out the Swamp. It's going to be a night game, blackout at night in the Swamp.
And then basically the SEC network threw them a curveball.
They threw them a curveball because nobody expected it to be an 11 a.m. game.
And this was announced before the loss to Georgia, right?
Well, it was announced that it was going to be a blackout game the beginning of the season, but it was announced that it was 11 a.m. before the loss to Georgia. Yeah,
that's right. So it's not like they just reacted to the Georgia. This was, no matter what they did against Georgia, this was going to be a game. And look, it's one thing. Razorback fans accept 11 o'clock. They don't like it either.
No, but they accept it.
The problem here is more that if you're in that north end zone, the sun's kind of low in the sky.
Oh, gosh.
And you're sitting there looking for 3 hours. The sun's in your eyes. So all those people go inside and are watching on TVs in that club area, which is nice, by the way.
Yeah.
So it may look like there's nobody there. They're just inside. Sort of like at Jerry World. They got these little things down below they're actually kind of halfway down below the ground along the home side and the visitor side. And those are tailgate areas in there.
Yeah.
You can come out of there and go up and sit down in the seats, but a lot of times they just stay down there and look up at the big screen.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about that. Arkansas fans are very good with 11 a.m. I have to give them kudos because they really do show up even with an 11 a.m. They are. They're used to it. But Florida fans are not, and they're over here like, we're going to boycott the game. We're not going to go.
And I even read, because you told me this, so I went on and read some of this stuff.
Go and read the
I read
forums.
2 or 3 of those people that said, we want Napier fired. I hope we lose.
Yeah,
good. I hope that's true.
Now, Florida fan, there's a side of the fan base that you hope says, okay, we want to win because if they beat Arkansas, that would make them bowl eligible. There's the other side of it, and I'm going to be fair. I'll tell you. There's the other side of where this could be their 6th win, which makes them bowl eligible. After Arkansas,
they lose this game. They may not lose another.
They may lose every single.
But that would get Napier fired too.
It would get Napier fired because they have LSU. Gosh, that's not going to be easy. Missouri, not going to be easy, and then FSU
at home.
At home.
Those other 2 games are road games.
Are road games. So it's not going to be an easy road for Florida. So that maybe this team is going in here saying, we need to win this game. It's a must-win game.
Or maybe they're just going, I'm hot.
I'm hot.
I don't like Arkansas. I don't get this game over with. I mean, I don't like Napier. Let's lose so we can get rid of it.
Can you imagine? It's the flip. They're like Graham Mertz is like KJ Jefferson. He's like, I'm done with this. I can't do this. Somebody get rid of somebody because I can't deal with it.
So we can hope that happens. It probably won't.
It's funny. We can hope it happens. It probably won't. But it's funny because Florida's having a lot of issues like Arkansas has when it comes to the offensive line.
Yeah.
I watched them in that Georgia game, and I was going, what are they doing?
Yeah.
It's like they just lost all technique. Like they just said, whoop, it went in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, they came out like a house on fire and then just went
done. Yeah. I mean, they just couldn't give Graham Mertz time. And then it was, if you look at that, right, if you look at that tape, I can't wait to be Arkansas's defense on Saturday because you're going to have a nice field day if that's the offensive line that shows up. So you got a lot of things that are going, I think, Arkansas's way in this one. So we'll see if I'm right. Swine American asked, is Dan Enos part of the Jimmy Sexton stable of coaching clients? Also, I have found that many coaches, Malzahn and Pitman included, become much less effective in their jobs after Jimmy Sexton represents them and gets them their huge contracts.
Well, as a matter of fact, we did some research. Dudley helped us out because he knows these things. And yes, Dan Enos has Jimmy Sexton as his agent. Gee, every time we turn around, we got one of these guys. And so here's what happens. If you ask the average Razorback fan, so he gives our head coach all this, gets him all this buyout money. We have to turn around and pay him a bunch of money. But then he brings in more guys to get more buyouts and even suggests the assistant coaches. And they get buyouts because Enos has got a pretty good buyout coming out. And so what is he going to be? Are we going to end up with another Jimmy Sexton guy when they come in with another offensive coordinator? I will say this. I don't think Jimmy Sexton ever comes into Arkansas, because I think if he did and everybody knew who he was, he wouldn't be in the state very often. They'd kind of show him, hey, there's the roadmap on the way out, so go away.
They do not like him.
Well, I don't blame him.
Me
Every
either.
time you see a problem financially, he's at the start of it. That whole Gus Malzahn thing, which he, Malzahn used him, but he was a part of that, where he gets an offer from Arkansas, a huge contract, and he just turns around and gets it from Auburn. So, I mean, this stuff happens all the time, but man, this guy's annoying.
You don't like Jimmy Sexton either, it sounds like, Mike. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. Chief Max says taking emotion out of the evaluation of Sam Pitman's running of the program. One can't say he is doing a poor job simply based on one really bad hire, while acknowledging his hires on the other side of the ball have been home runs. We've talked about that.
I think you got to believe that Yurachek is looking at that, because let's examine those two hires. First of all, Barry Odom left early in December, and Sam Pitman wasn't in a hurry to find a replacement. He had almost 3 weeks that he went around and talked to a lot of people, and he came up with Travis Williams. And then Travis Williams got him some other people in here, and so that all worked out well. We've seen how that works. So if he's got time, I think Pitman can hire the right guy. What happened with Enos with his hiring, was that Kendall Briles waited and then started looking around in mid-January. Arkansas's National Signing Day is just around the corner. Pittman said it. I can't be having to sit here and talk guys that are on the fence into believing that we're okay when I can't tell them who the offensive coordinator is. So he was in a hurry. So you can see, if Jimmy Sexton steps in and says, hey, man, you can have this Enos guy, and he's worked with him before, okay, I got to do that.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to fault him for that, because I think he correctly understood he had to make a hire, he had to make it quickly, and that was something that was readily available, and I don't think he understood all the things that were about to happen. It's real easy in hindsight to say, well, you should have known that the offensive line would get worse. You should have known that there would be too many plays. You should have known that he wasn't going to work with KJ. You should have. Okay, whoever says that, did you say that when he was hired? There are a few people that didn't like him.
We have one on the show, remember?
Yes, but they weren't saying these things. They were saying, well, he wasn't all that impressive. I would say he wasn't a world-class offensive coordinator. I've got a friend who is good friends with a major booster at Alabama. I always talk to him about this stuff. And he said that when Enos was hired here, the booster told him, the Alabama booster said, at Alabama, they give him a lot of credit for developing the fundamentals of Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Both of them. Those are really good quarterbacks. And he really came in and worked with them and got their fundamentals good. So he said, the view from here is he's a heck of a quarterbacks coach. He's not an offensive coordinator.
There you go.
But he still didn't have a lot of, he was okay at Cincinnati. He was okay at Maryland. He was doing all right. He wasn't just being awful. So I'm just saying that it wasn't like there were all these signs that this stuff was going to happen. There were some other things about Enos. He got here. I don't think his wife came here with him. I've heard some stuff about them being separated maybe and in the process of getting a divorce. I'm not sure what's going on there. But he apparently was here by himself, and that can weird you out. We talked about Chad Morris often about his family didn't come with him. If you're a head coach and you deal with all these problems during the day and you come home at night, I'd rely on my wife for this. If I've had a bad day, I come home and, oh, man, everything was bad today. And she goes, oh, okay, and we talk about it. You need somebody like that. I don't think Enos had that. So how can the fans know that stuff? There's just a lot of things that can cause something to happen that you can sit back after it's over and go, yeah, they should have known that. No, not unless you have ESP.
No, and also there's a kind of something to be said about what Pitman was alluding to in some of these press conferences where, he was even like, what are we doing? We're at that point, like you mentioned it, last week?
That's the part that's hard to
understand.
The
insubordination kind of
Why
stuff.
Why did he wait so long?
Yes, that is a great question. One that we don't know the answer to because Sam Pitman knows the answer for that one.
He's not talking about it.
No, he's not talking about that. But there,
The only answer I can give on that is that things weren't really, really bad yet.
Yeah.
Your defense was good. Your offense certainly showed some signs of playing really well, and you didn't know that at any minute it might just turn around. So you don't want to do something drastic.
well, and like somebody asked a question about when did the players turn, right? And that was it happened in the Mississippi State game. The players are like, no, this is not working out. And once you lose the players, I mean, that's where you as a head coach, if you're not already privy to the situation, it kind of wakes you up, right?
Yep,
And goes,
sure.
wow, I need to get rid of this guy. So Jack Penguin asked, Penguin, not Penguin? No, Penguin. You had a misspelling on your sheet, Mike. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Jack Penguin asked, you talked a lot recently about questioning Pitman after he retires about what happened, changed, or what went wrong this past season and this year. Put it on the line. Tell us what you think really happened.
Well, I don't know, but we talked about this before, and I've talked about the fact that a lot of times people won't talk about something and give you the real story until after it's all over.
Oh, yeah.
And I would like to, at some point down the road, when Pittman's retired, I would love to go down to Hot Springs, if that's where he is, and sit down with him and get him to open up on some of these things.
Okay.
And one thing I would absolutely ask him about, okay, what was going on during that stretch when the offense was kind of not doing what you wanted and you were making suggestions and he was saying he was going to do it and then he didn't do it? You're on the headsets with him. Wasn't there any point in which you said, hey, bozo, we're supposed to be moving KJ around and you're not doing that. What's going
bozo,
on?
Yeah.
So that's one question I would ask him. And absolutely the other thing I would ask him is this KJ stuff, to find out if there's anything at all to that. Because he said after the game, and this was after the Mississippi State, that they never considered making change at quarterback. But I would like him to answer that thing that I've heard from some parents, and it could be baloney, but
about playing Jacoby Criswell?
yeah, but I would like to get that answer from him because it would help explain a lot about what's going on and whether or not he would be honest in saying, you know what, as a head coach, I wanted to let my coordinators have free reign. I didn't want to be just a guy stepping in all the time. But then he sort of hinted at that.
Yeah, he
but
did.
I'd like him to discuss that at length.
Yeah,
and I will say on Bryles, if you go back to the Penn State game at halftime, remember that bowl game?
Yeah,
he went bonkers, and came out of the locker room and was talking to the TV reporter and said, I told him we got to start running the ball. We got to let KJ run, and he did, and it worked.
Yeah, there you go. So, but I think also you should add in there what you added in the previous question. What took you so long?
Yeah.
When did it flip for you? What took you so long? What was your thought process?
So the answer is I don't know these things. I don't have a good idea of what's going on there.
Yeah.
But I would like to talk to him in retrospect at some point and find it out.
Yeah, I'd like to as well. And like you said, things come out later after the season is over, after all these people feel like, we don't have a job there, they're not paying me any more buyout money, whatever it is, they'll come out and they'll say, kind of like.
It sometimes comes out like that.
Yeah. A lot of coaches do say, talk about things. Look at Urban Meyer and the documentaries and things like that. So our last question is from Mr. Positive. I like that we're calling him Mr. Positive now. Razor Alex 88, who says, I just want to go on record and say I still support Sam as our head hog. Dan Enos' experiment was a total failure, and firing him was as much needed move as I called for it last week. The next OC hire is very, very critical for the success of our offense moving forward. And Sam's tenure at Arkansas, I believe. Who would be on your short list for the next OC at Arkansas, Mike?
I don't have a short list because it's not my job to figure this out. It's Pittman's job. I will say this. If he's doing his job, go back to what we said about being on a tight deadline with Enos and Bryles. Okay, he's got a month before when this all started. He had a month before the season was over. Really, he had an extra week, so it was like 5 weeks because he had an open date week, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So you have 5 weeks before the season is even over to go out and quietly behind the scenes talk to people, talk to other coaches. He called up Kirby Smart, all these guys he knows, and say, all right, come on, give me a name. So he comes up with some names, goes through their agents very quietly, and starts figuring out what he's going to do. Now, maybe it works out, with Kenny Guyton.
Yeah,
if they start
that could
winning, and
be,
then,
yeah.
then you got your decision is easy. But let's say it doesn't, and you still don't get fired, and we don't think he will. Then you've spent the 5 weeks and you didn't get rushed. And I'm saying that when this guy has time, he can hire the right coach. And I think overall, when people start criticizing his hires, there might be 1 or 2 he's made in the time that he's been here. But he had a lot of turnover. He's had to hire a lot of guys, and I haven't seen a lot of hires that look bad.
Yeah.
I know some of these people say Fountain's looking good these days.
Yeah, I don't know. He just picked up a huge recruit as well. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he recruits well. He brings in good guys.
I mean, you could. People are questioning what's going to happen to Kennedy at the end of the season, the offensive line coach. I don't know, but if you have 5 weeks to come up with an offensive coordinator that will fit this system, and let's talk about this, because there are people that are still saying Drake Lindsay, they should recruit him.
Yeah.
Well, I understand that, but he's a drop-back quarterback, not a running quarterback at all, and he belongs in a system where it's a pro-style offense. Is Arkansas going to switch to that when the quarterback they have for next year and the guy behind him who's redshirting as a freshman, and then they've got a commitment from a guy that's already a run-pass quarterback in state,
Yep.
and then they got a freshman down the road at Greenwood that's really positive toward Arkansas.
Yeah.
He's a run-pass guy.
Yep.
Are you going to take all of that and just go, now we're going in another direction? So it looks like they're kind of set up in terms of quarterback, which would dictate the offense moving forward.
Yeah, and dictate who you recruit as
And
well.
dictate who you're going to go hire.
Exactly. I think that's a good point. Do you have a name on your short list? Is Kenny Guyton on your short list?
I don't, because, again, I'm not going to do that research.
Yeah.
I've got other things to do, sit around and act like I'm Sam Pitman, and I'm going to go around making phone calls. Who's a good offensive coordinator that will fit this system? That's not what I do.
You know my short list, right?
Who?
Dan Mullen. I said it last year before Dan Enos. Come on, that's my short list.
Well,
I think that's a good
I don't
pick.
think Mullen would take the job. But
I don't think so either. But it's nice to dream, you know. It's nice to think that maybe there's a chance. He's available, Mike.
Here's what I think. I think you need to go find a young guy.
Yeah.
I mean, look what you did with Travis Williams. Just kind of do that process. There's got to be somebody out there that's on the way up that everybody's talking about that you can get.
Yeah.
And just go after him. Go to his agent and say, hey, we give you a lot. And people have said, well, they can't get anybody any good because Pitman will be gone next year if they don't win 9 or 10 games. So why would a guy come here? Because he's going to get a guaranteed contract, and because he could come in here and do well. And even if everybody gets fired, including him, it's not on him because his head coach got fired.
He can go and get another job somewhere, and somebody else is going to see, hey, this was an up-and-coming OC, and we're going to.
It wasn't his fault. We just didn't win 10 games, you know.
Yeah, I think there is something to be said about having someone who has been around for a little bit just to give you that experience there.
If it's not Guyton, I think it's going to be somebody like that, not a Dan Mullen or some established guy. They're not going to bring. They're not going to bring Kendall Briles back. Some people have suggested that. Oh, he's not happy at TCU. Just ask if you want to come back.
TCU fans are like, take him back, Arkansas. We don't want him.
Come back here.
I mean, have you seen the tweets about that? TCU fans are like, Arkansas, you want him, take him. We'll give him to you. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I agree with Razor Alex 88, though. This is going to be a critical next couple of weeks for Sam, especially, to find someone out there, and maybe we'll start to hear some buzz about who he's looking at, or things will come out.
But we do have to say, when we get all these questions about, because there are people that are assuming he's gone, and they're making suggestions like Tom Herman and oh man, I hear Odom's coming back here as head coach.
What about Harbaugh?
Yeah, Harbaugh. That's Jake Beckett, a former Razorback, saying, go get Harbaugh. Well, like they're going to hire a guy that gets fired for cheating at Michigan.
Come on.
They're not going to do that. So when I hear stuff like that, I keep saying to myself, that's not how this works. If it came to that, and I don't think it is, I think Yurachek would go try to find another Musselman. Some guy that's kind of been below the radar screen but really has a good track record. But here's the reason why I don't think they're going to make a change. Because people don't get it, how much his buyout is. Even Arkansas media doesn't get it, because apparently when you look at his contract, you have to be a lawyer to figure out what the buyout is. And I know that because different reporters keep coming up with different numbers based on their interpretation. So before you do that, if you're a reporter, go hire a lawyer to read the thing and tell you what it means. But based on what I've read from different people who've attempted to do this, they're going to owe him, if they get rid of him at the end of the season, anywhere from $12 to $20 million. They do not have that kind of money.
They don't. They don't have that money. The boosters have told us they don't have that money. So it's a maddening situation because you look at fans who are like, get rid of him, get rid of him, get rid of him. But it's almost like money is not a factor, right? There's where you got it.
It's not their money.
It's not their money. They're not paying this man.
And then I love this when they come back and say, well, what's going to happen when nobody shows up at the games? You know what? They will show up at the games. I've been watching this program for 48, next year it'll be 49 years. I'm telling you, no matter what happens this year, people will be excited about next year. They may get unexcited after 4 or 5 games, but they're not going to have, they will still sell a lot of season tickets. They will still make money, and it won't be this, well, if you don't, we're going to make a replacement now, you're going to go broke because nobody's coming to the games. Baloney.
That's not true. That's not true. There are still plenty of people like Razor Alex 88 there that aren't the loudest on social media that still believe in Sam Pitman. I wish we could do what you talked about, last week or the week before. We should poll
which is a
them.
real poll.
We should go out and really poll the fans.
Not an internet poll, but a real poll that polls the whole fan base, a sample from the whole fan base.
Yeah, we go knocking door to door.
Houston had allegedly 8% support. They did a real poll, which a guy paid $30,000 for. Can you believe a guy was willing to spend $30,000 on a real poll? Yeah. He paid $30,000 for a real poll, and it showed that Houston Nutt had 68% support, not 8% support.
I think that's a lot of where Sam Pitman's, there's a lot of support for Sam Pitman. There is. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people that the people putting their money where their mouth is, right? People who are actually paying, and a booster or supports Sam Pitman. So I don't know. I don't know what you want us to tell you, but that's the people putting their money where their mouth is. So we'll see what happens going into the Florida game this Saturday. But that's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.